Welcome back to Reliving Retro. This is Season 5, Episode 4. And if you're new here, we pick one game at random and invite a guest on to rate it in 5 different categories: story, gameplay, visuals, sound, and how well it aged. And this week was a Patreon episode, so I want to thank everybody on Patreon. And if you want to join Patreon, it's only $2 a month to send your games to us, and we play a Patreon game once every month. So head over to Patreon. The link is in the description below. And we have a very special guest on, and I'll allow him to introduce himself. Go ahead, man.
Hi, I'm Brian Rigsby. I am the creator of Retro Game Books, and I live in San Francisco. Obviously a retro game fan and modern games alike, and super excited to talk about today's game.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And of course, I had to get the NES Achievements book. Oh my God, here it is. The NES Achievements book. I went the wrong way when I went to Zoom. That's weird. And our game that we played on this week is actually in here. And I had some fun trying to grab some of the achievements in here. However, I'm not very good at this game, so I wasn't able to grab a ton of them. But we'll go over that shortly here. Just some getting to know you questions. What would you say your introduction to gaming was? Maybe your first console, how old you were, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely a very young age, probably like 4 years old, neighbor's house, one of the original Atari systems. I couldn't tell you which one. We had a 2600 at one point, but we had like 2 games. We had like the Popeye game and something else. We weren't that interested. Yeah. Obviously, when the NES rolled around, neighbor got it. We were instantly hooked. You know, the rest is history. Pretty much followed everything since then.
Very cool. Nice. So were you strictly a Nintendo kid after that, or did you buy like Segas as well?
I mean, I was lucky. I had a brother. We were both into games. I still have a brother, but we were both very into games. And, you know, he had a Genesis, and then Super Nintendo entered the household, and we kind of fought over those things. I think my mother thought, hey, if we have a couple of these things at a time, it's not the end of the world. Doesn't mean we had everything, but like we never had a PlayStation, or I had to kind of catch up on that stuff at neighbors' houses and stuff. But we had a good community of friends, and you know how it goes. You know, if they have this game, you have this game, you end up playing a lot. We had the local video rental stores, you know, where you'd hope that your save file on Chrono Trigger was still there when you came back, and actually got lucky once on that. So, nice. Yeah, a little bit of everything. I'm definitely not a like, you know, Nintendo for life versus Sega. I love it all.
Yeah. I grew up with both as well. But I always have to ask, especially when it's like your brother had a Genesis and you had a Super Nintendo, did you guys fight over which one was better, or did you just fight over playing each of them? Like both?
I think we just fought over like TV time, you know, like who was going to actually get the TV. Yeah.
That's cool. Because I feel like a lot of people kind of build that Genesis versus Super Nintendo thing up like it was a huge deal back in the day, but I never really experienced it. I had both consoles. I loved both consoles, and I never argued with my friends which one was better.
Right. And I mean, sure, there was overlapping games, but there were so many different games that were unique to each system. So I just think they had unique qualities.
Yeah, definitely. That being said, what are some of your favorite types of games to play? Types meaning genres.
I mean, it's changed over the years. I've definitely, you know, in the earlier days, it was much more like action driven, you know, as far as you know, what enticed me with a game, whereas now it's a little more story driven, you know, like I'll enjoy more of like a Last of Us type game, those types of things. And somewhere in the middle, it was just me playing way too much Counter-Strike, like way too much Counter-Strike. I've like made maps for Counter-Strike as well. So that's also like how I stayed hooked. But in the early days, it was, you know, a lot of action platformers, you know, as most games or many of the good ones were. But I also love puzzle games, hooked on the Resident Evil series, except for the bad ones. There are a few bad ones. I won't get into that. Played a lot of Puzzle Fighter when I was younger in the arcades. That was my competitive game of choice. If anyone knows that one, super fun.
I've never played it.
And tons of... Oh, it's good. It aged well too. So that's a 5 out of 5 on age. Nice. And yeah, a little bit of everything. Not a lot of racing and sports, but definitely RPGs as well.
Cool. So what are you currently playing?
I just started Lunar the Silver Star Story, I think it's called. I had never played any of those games.
For the PS1?
Yeah, I'm playing the PS1 version. Most people told me that was probably a better choice from the few options that are out there. I try to avoid spoilers, so I didn't really look, but I also know I made a huge mistake because, you know, at the time of this recording, Tears of the Kingdom is about to land on my doorstep. So you really should not have started started
And
anything, and that's all I'm going to be playing.
Yaiser, are you going to jump into Tears of the Kingdom?
I did pre-order it. I think Sarah will probably play it first, though. She's
okay.
like right about to beat, the other one. What's it
Breath
called?
of the Wild.
Yeah, she's about.
You
to
beat that one though,
so.
didn't you?
I did
Okay.
way back.
That was a while ago.
Back in the day.
I don't know what it is about Zelda games, and we've talked about this before, but they don't really hook me for some reason, and I want to like them and I want to play them, and I'll get like a couple hours into them, and then I'm like, I'm done. I'll just fire up Mario or something more simple. My brain can't handle all the Zelda stuff. I don't know what it is. I got a dumb brain. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but anyways, all right. So I think it's time we can start talking about the game that we played this week. We played Paperboy, and this is a very well-known game. It's nothing like, a couple for the last couple of weeks we've been playing some games that like, well, not the last couple of weeks, I guess. We played General Chaos last week, and that's a pretty unknown game, I would say. I'd never heard of it before. It was recommended to us. We played Twisted Metal 1, and then we played Shadowrun to kick off this season, and I had never played that game either. So Paperboy is definitely the most well-known game so far of season 5, and I played it a ton as a kid. I don't remember being good at it as a kid, and I definitely am not good at it now. So I played it for about an hour, 2 hours or so. And spoiler, I did not make it past Tuesday. So, Yaiser, what about you? Had you played this before, and how long did you play it this week?
I actually had never played this game before yesterday. I played, maybe an hour or two, kind of like you did, but I also never made it past Tuesday.
Tuesday is rough, man. And then Brian.
Day.
Yeah, I played the NES version again. I think sounds like we all did. My son watched me. He actually, he's almost 3. He kept telling me to get back on the sidewalk when I'd go in the street, which was actually good advice because the street is really dangerous in the NES version. I made it to Thursday. I don't know how. I think I just went like as slow as you possibly can into the parts where you can't go slow anymore. And then I got frustrated and just started trying to go as fast as I could, and I could barely get to Tuesday.
Man, some of the, we'll get into that, I guess, for gameplay. So let's kick off story here. Yaiser, you want to kick us off with story?
I guess so. I didn't read the book or anything, so I don't have much to go off of, but I gave it a 1.5 because of the little story it gives you with the newspaper at the beginning and when you die.
Clippings.
Yeah. It could have been worse, but it gave me a little article.
Yeah, there really isn't much in the manual. Essentially, just says it's early morning and the birds are singing. That familiar twop could only mean one thing: the Paperboy is in town. Through sleepy eyes, you deliver newspapers to your loyal customers. It basically just says what you do, and then it says at the end of each day, your hard-nosed boss reviews your performance. And if you did well, then you can go on to the next day. And if you didn't, then you should look for a job at the fast food shop. Is essentially all it says. So there's no real story here. I agreed with you, Yaiser. I gave it a 1.5, and I had it at a 1, but then I was like, I'll bump it up to 1.5 because it had those little newspaper clippings. So yeah, I landed at a 1.5 also. What about you, Brian?
Exact same score. I gave it a 1.5. I mean, the newspaper at the beginning, it sets the stage. And if you get all the houses, sure, you get a new subscriber, or you lose people, so it's following through with the story. But it's really a stretch to even call that a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not much here. It's definitely no Super Mario World, that's for sure. Brian, if you're unaware, I gave that a 5 out of 5 because I'm biased, and that's my favorite game of all time.
The story you gave a 5.
Yeah,
well, because it's the best story of all time. I mean, obviously. Okay. No, I had to give it a perfect 5 across the board because it's my favorite game, and it'll never be supplanted as my favorite game of all time. So that's probably dumb to say because there's plenty of games that probably could. All right, let's move over to gameplay. Brian, you want to kick us off here for gameplay?
Sure. So, quick story. The first time I experienced this game was in the arcade in the original times. I'm old enough for that. when you see the handlebars, like that actually kind of drew you in. There were some, interesting types of, peripherals or whatever, joystick type things going on at the time, but there's nothing like the handlebars. I mean, it was pretty cool. It has motorcycle like controls where you can kind of throttle forward and back, sort of like a motorcycle,
Right.
and the little triggers and that kind of stuff. It made it really cool. And we are talking about the NES version, so I'm not going to give it any credit for that. But the gameplay, it really didn't translate well over from the arcade to the NES. Just to make the comparison real quick, because I think this is the fault a lot of people made at the time, which was they took an arcade game which was meant to be really hard, meant to be pretty shallow, be a quick experience that you pump the coins into, and they just kind of took that and put it in the NES. And they actually limited it even further. Like if you compare, you see like the screen doesn't scroll left and right like it does in the arcade, so you can barely go in the street. And so the gameplay is even further limited because you don't have much range of motion. There's less enemies and obstacles. You can far less. It's there's only 3 people to greet you at the end of the training course. It just, everything feels a little like less about it in the NES version. And so, you die so often. The collision detections also feels a little cruel. I don't remember if it was like that in the arcade version or not. But in the NES, you feel like you're kind of clear of an enemy, but then you still get hit anyway. You have to be like really swing wide, but you don't have a lot of wiggle room, right? Like you have to be pretty precise in your movements. So you're always straddling that line between like, am I going to hit this invisible collision, or am I going to hit the fence that I didn't want to hit in the first place on the side? So all that said, I gave it a 2. I'm gonna be pretty cruel with this game, so I feel like 2 is being kind of nice.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, Yaiser, where'd you end up?
I ended up right above that at a 2.5.
Okay.
Because I don't know if I was or not, but my brain was telling me I was having fun sometimes. But then, like 2 seconds later, I would be so angry because I don't know what. This made me so mad. The most mad that this game made me was just the drainage grates.
Yeah.
Why do I crash into those?
Right.
I can drive over those on my bike. You know what I mean?
They should just slow you down or something, like a little wiggle,
Yeah, so annoying. And I can't tell you how many times I tried to squeeze in between the curb and the parked car.
Yes.
It looks like
that
you'll
10
fit,
times,
but
probably.
Yeah, if you guys watch my gameplay, which will be up on Wednesday, if you guys watch my gameplay, you'll see me probably 3 times in a row because it kept spawning me right behind a parked car. And I'm like, can I not get between it? I can't get up on the curb. And then I realized the whole time that you could go to the outside of it.
Yeah, but then like Brian was saying, the screen doesn't move for you. So it's like, I don't know. It doesn't even feel like you're supposed to be able to pass it on that side. But
I didn't think you could.
it's stupid. I have a question for you guys. How do you avoid the little tornadoes?
I think you just go as fast.
You just go fast.
Yeah.
You pretend you're Sonic and you just go fast.
I think I just like auto died every time one came on the screen.
I think it gets to a point where it matches your speed. It cannot accelerate like beyond your speed. So as long as you have a little bit of space, you're safe.
Gotcha.
Like as soon as you see it, you just got to go as fast as you can, which sucks because then every obstacle in your way is now 10 times harder to dodge.
Yeah, it's harder to throw the fucking papers, but yeah. So yeah, 2.5 because it was, I don't know, sometimes fun.
Yeah, I get that. I just want to list off some of the obstacles in this game. So there's skateboard fiends as listed in the manual. Workmen, tornadoes, motorcycles, trees, tires, lawnmowers, tombstones, grates, fire hydrants, break dancers, the Grim Reaper, cars, dogs, fences, lawn ornaments, tricycles, garbage cans, dog houses, and manholes. Some of these things don't really fit. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know why the Grim Reaper's in there.
And you think he'd be one of the harder ones to dodge, but
he just kind of comes out like he's just like, oh, hey, I'm here. And then you're like, oh, hey, Grim Reaper. And then you just go around him.
But
so you had a hard time with the grates, right, Yaiser? Brian, what would you say the hardest obstacle was?
Well, the car thing drove me crazy too. It was the same thing. You think you can squeeze through. You're supposed to go off to the side unless you're already on the sidewalk. it just drives you crazy. I mean, this wasn't an enemy, but the thing that I found the most challenging is there's one particular house that's quite hard to actually land the newspaper at the door.
Where
or
the
like
door is like all the way sunken, like it's all
yeah,
the way in the back, kind of.
I just kept hitting the windows right next to it. And every time I think I'm going to finally get a perfect go at it, you know, and you don't get a lot of practice because you're waiting to finally get back to that house again.
Yeah.
You're maybe looking for a marker on the sidewalk to line it up, but you're not getting like 5 goes at it to like kind of perfect it. And I get so frustrated this game. Like we were saying before we started that, like, I think we all suck at this game. I think everyone sucks at this
So
game.
bad.
I haven't seen
And
anybody
still
be good
everyone
at it.
sucks at this game. So you're not going to want to put in the hours necessary to perfect it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had a really hard time with certain fences. Brian, like you were saying before, it seems like the hitboxes or something like that is really off because I'm like, I cleared this thing by a mile. Like I can't be that blind to think that I didn't clear it by a mile, and I'm still running into it somehow, and that drove me crazy. The other thing that drove me crazy was actually the dogs, which don't seem like they're that big of a deal, except for a lot of these houses, I was trying to take the easy way out and literally just drive right by the mailbox and like hand it into the mailbox. But there's a certain house where there's a dog, and if you go to the left of the doghouse, there's no way you avoid that dog. Absolutely,
Right, because
zero
you
chance.
can hit him with the newspaper, but
Yeah, but you can't throw to the left or to the right.
To the
so,
right. Dang.
Yeah, so you're kind of screwed there. So yeah, the dog. I never got taken down by the grates, but because I played this game before, I did know that it was a thing, so I knew to avoid that. But other than that, I just don't understand like the breakdancer thing. Why are you there? You know what I mean? Like some of these enemies are just so weird to me. Like why is there a dude breakdancing on the sidewalk? I can never understand that.
Great question.
Was breakdancing really in? Like at that time that like they needed to throw it in the game. There's
more than now, I guess.
Well, for sure more than now.
Peak breakdancing popularity.
But it was that big a deal that they needed to throw it in the game. I don't know. It's crazy.
I still
Anyway,
think the Grim Reaper is still weirder, but yeah,
it's so weird. It's so weird that Castlevania and Paperboy share an enemy.
What's up with the chick who comes running out of the house all pissed off at you?
Yeah, she's not in this.
Even if you hit her porch, she's still pissed off.
Is she not? I didn't.
No, I think she was. I think she was in the NES version.
Oh yeah,
the lady. She's like shaking the newspaper.
Oh yeah. I thought she had a knife. I don't know what she had, but that girl was trying to kill me.
She got me once.
I didn't see her in this list as an obstacle.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so I don't know what she's listed under. But she's.
I just want to know why.
Maybe
she's
the Grim Reaper. I don't know.
Oh yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Anyway, I ended up giving gameplay a 3. And it was really just because I felt like it's just different, and I think that it kind of deserved points for that. Like most NES games at the time were just like side-scrolling platformers and stuff like that, and this was something different for the console. And obviously, like there was an arcade version and stuff like that all before that. But I felt like it controlled pretty well, honestly, and the fact that you could brake and you could accelerate was more than I was expecting it to do. I did have fun, although it was very, very frustrating. This kind of reminded me of when we played Bart versus the Space Mutants, because I kind of had fun playing the game, but it was also like a very frustrating experience. And I just feel like that kind of brings you back to the old like 80s, like the NES days of that's every single game on the console. Essentially, it's kind of fun, but it's ultimately just very frustrating. But yeah, I took some major points off for like hitbox detection being completely off, and just sometimes they would put like obstacles in ways that I'm like, there's no way I was going to avoid any of these things. I don't know how you expected me to get past this. But yeah, so I gave gameplay a 3. I thought it was a little better than average. If we're counting 2.5 as average, I would say it's a little bit better than average for the NES. But yeah, let's move on to visuals. Yaiser, you want to kick it off?
Yeah. It didn't look that great, you know? I felt like, I don't know how many house designs there were, but they felt like there was maybe like, I don't know, 4 of them, and they were just like cookie cutter kind of.
Yeah.
Just like 3 colors, maybe 4. Red houses, white houses, to gray houses. And then like you got the color of you and your bike, and then the motorcycles driving by. look exactly like you on your bike, but a little bit bigger.
But man, that parked car though, that green really pops, doesn't it?
That green did pop. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't give it a great score here for visuals. I gave it a 2.
Okay,
Wasn't really doing it for me. I
I
know
get
it's
that.
old as shit. It's NES, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the oldest games I think we've played. I think
Yeah.
I think the oldest game we played before this was Mario Bros. Like the original. Well, not Mario Bros. Super Mario Brothers, the
Yeah.
platformer in '85, and I believe this game was made in '84. So technically, the oldest game that we've played so far, and it looks it.
Yeah, it does.
But I will say, I think for the era, I think it looks pretty average. I don't think it. I could tell what the things were for the most part. Like I could tell what everything on
Mhm.
the screen was supposed to be, and so for that, I just kind of gave it a 2.5. But yeah, but the colors are very very bland. There's not a lot really going for it.
Mhm.
I am happy though that the Grim Reaper actually looked like the Grim Reaper. Felt
He
like
did.
that sprite was decent. What about you, Brian? How'd you feel about the visuals?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's unfair to keep comparing it to the arcade version, but if it was the arcade version, I'd probably give it like a 3.
Hmm.
I gave the NES one a 2. So, I mean, again, to compare real quick, like the bikers, the houses, the enemies, like they just look so much better in the arcade. And
Yeah.
I just keep coming back to it. The NES version, like one of you were saying before, like it's pretty flat. Like a lot of NES games had a lot of flatness to them, right? It's like the grass is green. It's not like speckled or something. Like
Right.
some
Yeah.
went a little farther, right? Like you could do more, but I would argue, there is gameplay benefits to that, right? Because it does create high contrast. Like you were just saying that you can tell the enemies apart. You want to be able to see the fence from the grass from the Grim Reaper, right? Like that's
Right.
important to the gameplay. You got to act fast. So I think it's an important contrast. This game has a really unique perspective. I mean, it doesn't seem that unique to us today, but back then, this weird skewed angle.
Yeah. It's like an
I don't
isometric.
There was nothing like this. Yeah, isometric and tilted, right? And
Yeah.
there was just nothing like that. It felt like this weird trick that they were doing. Um, One more comparison to the arcade, that graphic of the boy in the cover of the newspaper looks so cool in the arcade. It's like they actually had an artist like spend some good time on it. In the NES, it just looks so bad. And I think the worst looking thing in the NES version is when you crash and you're just like a pancake on the floor. Like, what is that? It's
It's
supposed to
just
be
a
a bike
blob.
and a boy, but it's
It's
it's just like a
just
puddle of color.
Just a pile of
Um,
shit.
they like knowing how hard the game is and how much you're gonna crash.
Mhm.
That's probably a graphic you could have spent a little more time in. So
That's
yes,
fair.
I gave it a 2.
I wonder if they thought it was hard when they were making it. Like obviously, like any of these games that are kind of like derived from arcades or so, they're meant to be hard because they're meant to eat quarters, right? But I
Mm.
wonder if like the NES port, they're like, oh yeah, like this is just as hard, if not harder, than the arcade version. Brian, you playing both? Which version do you believe is harder, the NES or the arcade?
I mean, pretty similar. Although I think the arcade was the one that had like 3 difficulty levels, I think. So that's really the standout difference. I think they have like Easy Street and all whatever else it was called. I can't remember, but
Mhm.
so I think that's going to be the biggest differentiator with difficulty. There's more enemies, so it's going to be a little trickier in the arcade. Like you got to have that quick recall of I know this guy knows patterns. So there was definitely some harder stuff in regards to that with the arcade because there's like
Gotcha.
little bombs going off and like the speed changes with things in a way that's a little more erratic, a little less predictable. So NES was definitely a little more predictable, but then it's more confined, and that makes
Right.
it harder.
So just like different, in terms of difficulty. I
Mhm.
believe they did add Easy Street and stuff in Paperboy 2, I want to say, for Super Nintendo. That's the one I played more as a kid, actually.
Is
Was
that the one,
Paperboy
like,
2.
correct me if I'm wrong, could you, like, go to the other side of the street in that
Yep.
one? Is that okay.
Yeah. You could
Wow, it's been a
throw
long time.
yeah, you could press like A to throw left and B to throw right or whatever. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I was trying to do that in this one. I'm like, oh, you can't do that. So the dog killed me every time. Which was a little frustrating. Yeah, there's also Paper Girl in that one too. They got very inclusive. All right, so I think we're good here for visuals. Let's move over to sound. I love the Paperboy theme, like the Paperboy like track, I guess. but there's only really one, right? We didn't really talk about it much for gameplay, but there is like the target practice, like training area that, you get to the end of the street, and just like everybody's streets that they grew up on, at the end, there's this giant bike training path thing that you have to go through, where there's all the jumps and there's rivers and all this stuff you got to jump over.
Hoops and targets. Yep.
Of course. Yeah. Everybody knows it's very relatable. So, there's a different track there, but the main like Paperboy track, I love that song. It's like one of my favorite like old school like video game themes. That alone got sound a 3, but everything else is really subpar, I think. And the fact that there's only really the 1 or 2 tracks is pretty sad, considering games like Castlevania are on the same system, and Castlevania is one of the best soundtracks of any video game I've ever heard in my entire life. But again, I just love that one track so much that I kind of bumped it up to a 3. Brian, how you feeling about sound?
Yeah, I was not as generous. Again, I'm going to be cruel. I gave it a 1.5. The song is catchy. It's not distracting, as far as like, function goes. Like it's all good. It's just doesn't really do it for me. It's no like, Mega Man 2 or like you said, Castlevania.
Right.
And then the limitation that's actually the bigger reason why I kind of bump it down, right? There's essentially 2 tracks. I don't even think there's anything during the intro, right? When the game's just kind of getting started and the paper is shown, couldn't even give us a little something there.
No, when I first booted it up, I was almost positive that
you think it's broken, right?
Yeah. I thought it was muted or something. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. There's no sound. And then I moved I hit select to go to like 2 players, and I was like, oh no, okay, there's sound. It's just a beep.
Right. And then I mean, if people are looking for a little more diversity, the arcade version did have some cool voiceover. I mean, it's not very cool anymore. But there were some people saying some stuff. I was definitely not expecting the NES to do that. Like that is beyond NES expectations. But I give it a 1.5. It's just kind of okay for me. Not great.
I mean, I think that's totally respectable. I think that's fair.
The sound effects, not that great either, right? The crashes, the bleeps, the bloops.
So
yeah, super subpar. Yaiser?
Yeah, so just based on the song and also landing a paper, that's a pretty satisfying sound.
It is actually, right? Like, I was thinking about that. I was going to bring that up. Sorry to steal your spot here for a second, but I was going to bring that up as a part of gameplay, that landing a paper in the mailbox is almost as satisfying to me as like sniping in Halo. Like when you get like a headshot, dude, it's right up there. I'm telling you. Like maybe that's why I was just enjoying it so much, where I finally hit that like in the mailbox, and I'm like, yes, let's go.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was a good sound, and the song's very catchy, I thought. But like, come on, you got one song. The sound effects, like Brian said, are pretty awful. Most of them. So yeah, I landed at a 2 here also.
Okay.
I almost went 2.5 because of the paper throw, but not quite.
I went real high with that 3, huh? Yeah, that one song. Well, to be fair, I guess that one song playing over and over again, for it not to get super annoying and repetitive, I feel like deserves major kudos, because again, going back to Bart versus the Space Mutants, that first level is just the Simpsons theme over and over and over again. And I've never hated a theme song more than the Simpsons theme song.
Well, even worse, it's like the fakey Simpsons theme, because they didn't even have the rights to it, right? Isn't it like kind of this butchered version of it?
It's off, yeah.
Oh, that game is brutal. I'm kind of glad I missed that episode.
It gets so annoying. It gets very annoying.
Yeah, that wasn't fun.
All right, let's head over to Aged. All right, Yaiser, kick off Aged.
All right. It didn't look great. It wasn't really any story at all. There's one song in the whole fucking game. But honestly, it controlled smoothly. It didn't the controls weren't like clunky at all.
Right.
Sure, the hitboxes were shitty, and but I don't know. I didn't hate it as much as
I thought
I was gonna. Yeah. But still, I can only really give it a 2.5 here.
Okay. What about you, Brian?
I struggled with this one, right? Because I'm sure we all are very subjective on like what we mean by age. So I was thinking in terms of, well, I never really liked this game all that much originally. So am I comparing it to how it aged for how I thought of it then? Or am I thinking more of like if a 7-year-old picked this game up today, right? How would they feel? And like to the points you were just making, yeah, you could just pick up and play this game quickly, right? So it's like kudos to the game for that. There's NES games out there where like a kid today would try it and they would immediately throw down the controller because they wouldn't have the patience to figure it out.
Of course.
This is a hard game, but you figure it out immediately, right? You know exactly what's going on. A bike, a paper, got it. I think people still have paper routes, so that's probably, I hope that's still topical for people. They know what's going on. You know, of course it doesn't look great, but it didn't look great then either, right? So I'm still not holding that against it. So that's why I actually gave it the highest score I gave, which is 2.5. Because I feel like it's pretty in line and it's accessible to people today.
Yeah. It's funny you brought that up about the, like, if a 7-year-old, you know, picked it up and played it, because I actually do that with my 8-year-old daughter. I have her play the game that we're going to play this week and see how long she can play it, because she's used to playing Nintendo Switch games. So she's used to playing like the new Kirby, and she's messed around with, like, she beat Mario Odyssey. And so like she has a pretty, like, I think if she can play it for like at least an hour or so, it stands up pretty well. This didn't for her really, but she did last longer playing this than she did Twisted Metal, which I gave a 1.5. So I actually also landed at a 2.5 here, because I kind of agree with you guys. It's not any worse than it was when it came out, right? But it definitely didn't age like it got any better. So I think it has to kind of stick around the 2.5 area here. And man, it's crazy that I'm the highest on this game, and I landed at average. I landed at a 2.5, and that's really just because the sound was a 3 for me.
Oh, that's your overall?
My overall, I'm the highest at a 2.5. Yaiser, you came in second at a 2.1, and Brian came in at the bottom with a 1.9. Yeah, so I mean, so overall we gave it like a 2.17 ish.
I feel like this game, you know, sometimes you get to the end and you hear overhauls, and sometimes my score is like higher than I thought, than I actually like felt about it. But this game, I feel like that score, I didn't hate it as much as a 2.1 or whatever you said I gave it.
Well, because I mean, if you compare it to other games that you've done for the show so far, 2.1 is probably your second or third lowest score you've ever given.
Yeah, it's not my second or third least favorite game we've played.
Right, because I think Quake 64, you gave a 1.8. That's pretty low. Superman 64, I think, was your lowest game.
Oh yeah, that's the worst game ever.
At a 1, a flat 1. So I mean, you've definitely had games where they seemed worse, but like, did you enjoy playing this one more than General Chaos last week?
Yeah, I would say about the same, probably.
Because they're pretty close.
Did you guys play 2-player General Chaos? Because
No,
I feel like
we
that
didn't.
game was, because we rented that as kids and just played like that's a 2-player game. I feel like
we should have.
It really is.
Some of these games, I think we have to do that with, where we have to kind of like revisit them after playing them multiplayer. I didn't even know it was a multiplayer game. And then I found out our guest that came on was like, hey, did you know that you could play, what do you say, 4 players?
4-player, yeah.
Yeah. 4
Oh, really?
players,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so that you could get like a multi-tap or whatever for the Genesis.
I know this is not the game of the day, but did you know that if you throw a grenade and pause it, the grenade will still keep going and blow up and hit guys? You can cheat a little bit there.
Can I tell you that I didn't know you could pause that game?
This is also like 30 years of memory, so I could be totally wrong.
It's just so funny to me, like, because as soon as that game would start, I would just panic because people are running around. I'm like, oh no, I want you to go over here. And the grenade guy, oh, I sent him in the wrong direction. And now 3 of my guys are dead so fast. And now I don't know what to do. God.
My screen shut off.
It happened so quickly. But all right, so Paperboy. I don't know. It's not as bad as our ratings say, I guess.
I don't think so, but
I mean, a lot of people would consider it like one of the must-owns if you have an NES. Like if you're telling somebody to buy an NES console, like a lot of people I think would be like, "Oh yeah, you got to get a Paperboy cart in there. I mean, because there must have been a reason why you put it in the book, right? Like you felt like it's one of the most popular games for the console, right?
It's iconic, right? I definitely, unlike the maps book, which I just tried to just get everything that had whatever I consider a map. The achievements book was meant to be like, these are iconic games, probably games you have or had or knew about, right? And yeah, Paperboy definitely is one of those games.
I'm so happy, by the way, that you included Maniac Mansion in this. This is a game that we played on the show. Yaiser hated it. I'm a huge fan of it because I played it all the time when I was a kid, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have to fire Maniac Mansion up and unlock some of these achievements.
I love hated. I definitely liked Day of the Tentacle more, but I think that's most people.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I never played that one, but I've heard that it's better. Just to go over some of the achievements here in the book that I actually did do. Special delivery, which is throw a paper into a mailbox. Nailed it. Smash a window, first try. Got that one done. Those moves are fresh, where you crash into a breakdancer. Got that one. That one I did on purpose, just to say I did it. Let's see. Oh, bullseye. Throw a paper at a target at the training course. The daily report. I did that. Reached the end of the training course, and then I never could figure out how to gain a subscriber, and then I was not even close to finishing the week.
You gotta get a perfect run.
Yeah,
is that what you have to do?
Yeah.
Oh, then they're like, oh, that's a good Paperboy.
Although, like the easy way to do it is just do really bad on your first day, and then just whoever you have left, those two people, you got to get both those people. I'm pretty sure that's still.
You could do it. You could gain more. I'm
pretty sure that you still get a person if you do that, but you're basically operating from behind just for the sake of getting an achievement.
That's pretty cool. So
that makes sense.
So just curious. So for people out there curious about this NES achievements book, are there more books coming?
There could be. I wouldn't mind looking at SNES or Genesis or something like that. Cool. Still keeping it retro, of course, and just kind of working my way up. It's fun too. It's just fun coming up with the names and like thinking about the different challenges and then revisiting games. It forced me to do that. I'm working on a new maps book. The maps book, for people that don't know, is just it's not like a bunch of level design. It's not like a bunch of like screenshots stitched together type of stuff. It's more of like maps from manuals and posters, fold out posters and magazines, a lot of Japanese magazines, hand drawn stuff, primarily that type of stuff. I am making a Genesis version for that. So that'll come out in a couple months or so. And I got another secret one in the works as well, but it's not an achievement one. But I'll just keep bouncing around. I did the pixel art Metroid book, which was a lot of fun. It's 125 modern pixel artists plus a bunch of articles, tutorials, interviews, etc. So could do another one of those with some other theme. Just haven't decided what. Or maybe something totally original. I have a lot of ideas and just not enough time.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what else you come out with. Before we move on to see what our next game is, we do have to give it up for our guy DMC, who's going to come in with his DMC drop-in.
Oh shit!
So take it away, buddy.
All right, just gotta grab these papers because we're trying to get more. And oh my god, is that the Grim Reaper? All right, didn't expect that. Yep, we're talking about Paperboy for the NES for the Reliving Retro podcast and the DMC drop-in. This is a game I definitely played as a kid, and I thought I liked, but in revisiting, or reliving it if you will, I can't say that I'm all that crazy about it. The premise is incredibly simple. You play as a paperboy and have set houses on a route to deliver to. White and yellow houses are customers, red houses are not. The goal is to play for as long as possible to set a high score, or about a week in the game world. And this isn't your normal neighborhood. Instead, it's a street filled with chaos. From kids driving their big wheels into the street, dogs, and even crazed people with a knife that will run after you. There's everything here trying to stop you from delivering these damn papers. If you're lucky enough to get to the end of the street each day, there's a training course that is hands down the most fun part of the game, filled with jumps, targets, and traps you must quickly navigate around and boost your score. I also find it hilarious that there's a crowd waiting for the paperboy at the end. Wait, where the hell is this dude's head? Finally, at the end of each route, you will be assessed based on your accuracy for subscribers. If you drop the paper off, you keep them. If you miss them or broke their windows, you lose them. Apparently, you can gain new subscribers by breaking the Red House's windows, but in my efforts, I never got one to resubscribe. That is one hell of a way to convince people to sign up, though. Overall, this game just doesn't do it for me. The music is super basic to the point of being grating if you play for more than 15 minutes. Gameplay isn't all that special too, as nearly 2/3 of the screen is just used for the houses you're trying to deliver to. To its credit, the cast of hazards is fun and goofy, and even though I was able to get better with each run, I'm not planning on playing this any further after today. Much like physical news media, this is one game franchise that I'm not at all surprised to see it left behind. Thank you so much for having me. My name is DMCPCRT, and you can follow me on TikTok or on Twitch at the same handle there of DMCPCRT. Until next time, cheers.
All right. Thank you, DMC. Appreciate that as always. Head over to Twitch where you can watch him stream. I believe he streams on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. DMCPCRT, and then follow him on TikTok as well. All right. So real quick, round table. Would you recommend that people relive Paperboy? Is it something that if somebody asked you, hey, I never played Paperboy before, should I go back and play it? Is it worth the time and effort? Brian?
So I would say yes. If they have easy enough access to it, emulate it. You already have it. A friend has it. You can get it for cheap. It's probably going something like 15, USD. For the NES version, maybe worth it, maybe not. If you can come, if you have the money.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's even for an hour or two, like we said, we did. It is worth it. It was a nice, visit down memory lane or whatever the name of the street is.
Yeah, I actually second that. Even though this game got pretty bad ratings on our end, I would say that it's a classic for a reason. I think that you should go back and play it, and try to just get past Tuesday. If you get past Tuesday, I think you were pretty successful. What about you, Yaiser?
It's weird, but yeah, I'm gonna say yeah too. Especially emulate it on your phone. It's one of those games where you, like, if you're in like a waiting room at the doctor or whatever, pull up your phone. You could play for 10 minutes and forget about it.
Right?
Because you're not gonna get that far anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's fun. As frustrating as it is pretty fun.
Yeah. I think it's pretty fun too. Definitely would recommend it. All right, now's the time of the show where we randomize what game we're playing next week, and we have our guest guess it. So I'm gonna hit that spinner. You guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a stealth game published by Konami, released for the Game Boy Color in May of 2000.
It's Ghost Babel. What's it called? Is it that? Is it Ghost Babel? Isn't that the original Japanese name for it?
You're right. That's crazy.
I mean, Metal Gear. Metal Gear.
It's Metal Gear.
Babel, I mean,
It's
but
Metal Gear.
It was called something else here, like Gaiden or something else.
It's just called Metal Gear Solid.
Oh yes, that's right. So I played it like 2 years ago, so that's the only reason why it's like I got like a fakey copy of it. So
well, when you said Ghost Babel, I'm like, wow, he knows the alias for it. That's wild, because it's listed right here as the alias, like Metal Gear Ghost Babel, and I'm like, wow, that's super.
I mean,
impressive
stealth game that's really old though kind of limits it. I know they're everywhere now, but back then not so much.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if the year 2000 might throw you, because it's like, oh, was Splinter Cell a thing?
No, I remember it came kind of late. Yeah.
No, that's awesome though. I'm very excited to play this. I've never played this version of Metal Gear Solid. I played the PS1 version. Obviously, I played Snake Eater is one of my favorite games of all time. So I'm gonna really try not to hold it to that kind of standard, because Snake Eater is amazing. But a stealth game for the Game Boy Color, I'm very excited to see how that plays. And And speaking of DMC, our drop-in guy here, he's going to be on the show with us the whole episode next week, and
Cool.
he's going to be our guest playing Metal Gear Solid with us. So if you guys have any thoughts on Metal Gear Solid for the Game Boy Color, please drop them below. And if you guys have any thoughts on Paperboy and what your ratings would be, please put them in the comments below because I love reading them. Brian, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Before you go, I just want to know if you have any retro recommendations for us to add to our master list.
Yeah, I got a couple. Let me know if you've already done them. So,
Of course.
2 for the Genesis, actually. I just have a lot of Genesis on the mind. So, the original Toe Jam and Earl was one of my absolute favorite games. If
Cool.
you can't play multiplayer, though, you might not want to. It's not going to be a fun solo experience or as fun.
Okay.
But I love that game. If you've never played it, it's essentially a roguelike, but very funky, very funny, and a lot of fun. And
yeah, we've
one
never played that one. So
you never played it? Okay.
nope,
So
added to the list.
and another one, if you want to invest the time, although you said you don't like Zelda-like games, but Landstalker is another good Genesis game. It's got a weird, just like Paperboy, it's got a weird twisted isometric view. It's like literally like a 45-degree twisted angle that I think was off-putting to some people, but it's a really fun game. It's your elf with a sword, action RPG. It's a lot of fun, and it's not too long either. So
cool. Yeah, we'll definitely put both of those into the randomizer, and hopefully we can get to playing one of those pretty soon here, because we really don't get to very many Genesis games. I believe we've only played 2, 3, maybe. We played what? General Chaos. We played Columns 3. Is that it?
Sonic 3D.
Oh yeah, Sonic 3D. Yeah.
And I played Shadowrun.
Oh right, yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
played that one on the Super Nintendo though.
Yeah,
we did that one a little different.
and I played Aladdin.
True. Yeah, you played a lot more Genesis than I have.
Played more than you.
Yeah, you're a Genesis boy now. I mean, you never played it when you were a kid, but
never had one.
Gonna turn you into a Genesis guy, I think. All right, but Brian, thanks so much for coming on again. Please tell everybody one last time where they can find you.
Yeah, if nowhere else, head over to retrogamebooks.com. You can find links to my Twitter and Instagram there, but on Twitter I am at Brian Rigsby. Don't worry if you can't spell it, just go to retrogamebooks.com, you'll find it. And Instagram, I got Retro Game Books as the handle there, so that's an easy one to find. That's about it. You go there, you'll find everything else.
Cool. Yeah, very excited to see what else you got coming out, man. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on, and take care. Next week we will be playing Metal Gear Solid on the Game Boy Color with our good pal DMC. So until next week, see you later, guys.
Peace.